we as women, I feel like we want permission from other people to act or do a certain thing or way. And I'm like, you know, you don't need permission. You don't need permission.
Introducing The Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of The Vixen Voice. So today I have the honor of speaking with Kirsten Flory, and I have been on her podcast, The Small Business Mindset. So if you haven't checked that out, go check it out. And an easy way to get there is I have a playlist on our YouTube channel, and we can link you through to Kirsten's podcast. So we had a great conversation there, and we had so much fun that I wanted to bring Kirsten on here to chat with all of you. So Kirsten is the founder of Foundations Commercial and has over 25 years of experience in real estate, banking, and marketing. She also provides consulting services to area startups and tech companies throughout the state of Kansas through mentoring, space planning, and financial strategy. So you can see she's a woman with a lot going on. She's also a published author and hosts the podcast, The Small Business Mindset. So Kirsten, welcome.
Oh, thanks, April. It's nice to be on your podcast.
Yeah, so fun. I love it. So what I'd love to know is, because technically it's your first time on our podcast, even though you and I have chatted before. So I always would like to hear, I mean, obviously you have a lot going on. You know, you also have a thriving personal life, right? So I'm sure at some point something happened that might have changed your life or kind of polished you to the woman we see today. So when you're looking back, what do you think is like a story that stands out along your journey that really made this amazing woman sitting here with us today?
Oh gosh, what a great way to phrase that. Thank you. You know, I think if you are somebody that has an interest to be an entrepreneur or own your business, you've probably had that passion in your gut for years. And I think that's something that was inside of me from a younger age. I just didn't know what the path would look like. And for many of us, it's like, do I have a special skill? Can I make an amazing product? Or do I offer a special service? And the things that I'm even constantly asking myself is that what sets me apart? What makes me a little different? So my career journey is probably like a lot of people's career. You know, you come out of college or not, and you start in a career and you determine, do I like it? Do I not? Am I good at it? Am I not? Does this fill my cup? Does this give me some drive? So I did start right out of college. I was a communications major, which is kind of a broad business-esque degree. Worked in marketing for a few years and fundraising. And then I worked in banking for about 8 years. And that was interesting because my role there was business development, but it got me in front of a lot of corporate decision makers, companies, and how to, make sure their employees and their companies are supported through financial services. Got to expand and help grow a commercial loan portfolio. So I loved what I did, and I loved that organization. And so the couple things that happened, I loved working in finance. I loved having those conversations with people because I was directly impacting their financial well-being, which was very fulfilling for me, but I got to see them grow and blossom through that pathway. Then something happened. I was there for 8 years. Again, I had a great team. And that's the other thing I think that was very important for my journey. I've always been part of teams that were very insightful and passionate and focused on not only what we do best, how do we grow ourselves, but how do we serve either our client base or the community as a whole. I think that has always been something that has been paramount for me to make sure I am ingrained in an organization that has that culture. But after about 8 years, I had an annual review, and it was great. And, my boss, who happened to be located in another state, said, "You're doing great. You've just maxed out your salary." And for someone that is in a growth mindset, yeah. And I said, "What does that mean exactly?" I was like, "What? Wait a minute. Full stop. What does that mean?" He goes, "Well, we're always trying to evaluate pay scales and I'm like, okay, but really, I mean, when he told me that, I was like, from this point forward, unless the HR department does a study and reevaluates my pay range, I'm not going to make any more money at this organization that I've been at for 8 years.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
that organization worked with me for about 6 months and said, okay, can we cross train you? Can we do this? And really, for me to move up in that organization, I would have had to move to another state. And for our family, that wasn't something that was in the cards, and that's okay. At the same time, I'm a firm believer that the universe or God or whatever you believe in puts things in our life for a reason. I had a friend of mine that was in commercial real estate, and she was looking to add somebody to her team. And she approached me and she says, would you consider this as a career? And I immediately said, no, no.
I love it.
And here's why. I was in a nice salary, full benefits position. And she said this would be 100% commission. And honestly, it scared me to death. I thought, I don't know, too risky, right? So the way my brain works, I'm a very strategic thinker. And I'm like, but maybe I don't have enough information. So I started asking questions. And so as I was trying to cross train at my current role, I was also asking her a lot of questions of her organization. Show me the financials, show me the market share, show me the history, show me the potential. And I took a deep dive. And then it was really like soul searching for me. It's like, could I do something like this? So 6 months later, I left my job. And with actually the blessing of my former organization, they're like, you know what, we realized we probably couldn't keep you, but we're so happy for you. And now that former employer is a client, which is fantastic. And so I jumped into commercial real estate. And that was 11 years ago. And the first year was rocky. And I think anytime you make a big transition like that, so my husband and I had a long conversation about our personal finances. We made sure that we had enough savings. We took out a home equity line of credit because I didn't know what my income might look like. I took a little bit of a pay cut that first year, and that was expected. But then going into that industry and commercial real estate or insurance or any industry where you are a commission-based salesperson, it's kind of hard to project sometimes what the first year looks like or the first 3 years going to look like, I think. But having the confidence in yourself that like, I can do this type of work. But what it also gave me, in addition to the work in that industry, it allowed me to be a somewhat of a business owner. I was an independent contractor and I was self-employed. And so in a lot of ways, I had to manage my time, my resources, and really, forecast my own personal earning potential. So that was very exciting for me. So 11 years ago, when I switched careers and jumped into that real estate field, and at the time I was working for a very large international brokerage firm and, had a lot of resources in a way, but very corporate. I actually put the business plan together for my company today because I thought, this is a stepping stone for me. And I know I wasn't going to be there forever. I just didn't know the timeline of when that would happen. And so, working through that process and putting that plan together, and then over the years, revising the plan and, tweaking the plan and really understanding where my expenses needed to be, what efficiencies that I could put in place for myself that might have been, better or worse or different than the corporation that I work for. And then COVID happened.
Yep.
And so I think for a lot of people, COVID gave us time, and COVID gave us time to reflect on how we spent our time, what's important to us, how we function, what relationships we want. And so for me, during COVID, I pulled that business plan back out and I took a good hard look at it. And I thought, you know what? I had to ask myself a question. I said, is now the time? Because I had the time and I had the business plan and I tweaked the business plan. And I thought, if there's no perfect time to make big changes. And I think a lot of times we assume, I think especially as women, we want a cushion. We want a safety net. We want the assurance that what we're doing will fly. And I had some experience years before when I made that first career jump. I'm like, I know what I'm capable of. And so in 2021, I left and I started my own brokerage. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing. It's been hard. Absolutely. There are bumps along the way that you take. But I think if anything, the bottom line factor, and this is something I'm grateful. I have a wonderful partner in life with my husband. And, he's in a very, very different career path. But, he asked me, he's like, do you think you can do it? Do you think you're capable? And I feel like that's the litmus test for a lot of people. I didn't have every single skill. I didn't know all the
Mm-hmm.
answers to every single financial question or management question or all the what ifs that life and business was going to throw at me. But I had confidence in my ability to figure it out. And I feel like if you have that type of feeling inside of you, then you can honestly can do anything.
I love it. So many things came up there. Thank you for sharing. One thing I noted was I recently heard I have a very good friend, John Cheplack, and he's a coach to real estate brokers and he does exceptionally well. But anyway, he talks about talent versus skill set. Or I was on something with him and he was talking about that because I heard you talk about skill set and did I know how to do everything right? And
Yeah.
what's my skill set? I mean, we're innately born with certain talents, right? Maybe the ability to speak in front of people, maybe we're charismatic, these are kind of what are called thought of as soft skills, but really I like to think of them as talents. And so I do think so many people get held up on, ooh, do I have the skill set to do this? But I think when you find the right career that matches your talents, like you can go learn the skill sets. It's not that big a deal, right? And you kind of made multiple, you changed from successful career in banking to commercial real estate, and then you kind of had the comfortable position, even though you were your own boss, but you had huge resources, and then you made the uncomfortable decision to go out on your own, right?
Right.
So here's what I'm curious about, because you are very strategic, because I heard the word strategic and analytical a lot, right? Which is why
Yes.
you do business consulting and you're probably really amazing at it. But, I work with a lot of women who have nice, cushy corporate jobs and they have a side hustle and their dream is to do the side hustle, right? And
Right.
it's like you can't get to your $250,000 salary usually with your side hustle before you have to jump ship, right? And I'm sure I
Yes.
heard you say first year I didn't make as much money, right? So you can be analytical, strategical, logical all day long, but you have to have something else there to make that. I call it the leap of faith that it's going to work
Yep.
out. So like,
Yep.
I know you said you and your husband had conversations, all this stuff, you looked at your finances, but there's something internal that makes you take that leap. So for you, what do you feel was really driving that? And it might be different each time.
So I'm so glad you asked this question because I feel like this is really the secret sauce. And I think our
Yes.
backstories are different for every single one of us. How you were
Mm-hmm.
raised, how men influenced you in your life. What was your
Yes.
parental structure? And I'm not going to go into all the weeds with that, but I'm also a firm believer, and I have two siblings, and I'm the middle of three kids. And even if you think about how you were raised, what was your sibling dynamic or non-sibling
Yeah.
dynamic, or what was your
Yeah.
housing situation? We are so impressionable as we grow up, and we develop these mindsets, especially going into young adulthood. It's like who we are. Are we worthy?
Yeah.
Are we capable? And I also think that if you are somebody that came into that space, maybe you had some scars with that, you can change that mindset. Because I was somebody that came into young adulthood with some scars and some doubt of who I was and what I was supposed to be and what I was capable of. But here's what I can tell you. Even though inherently there's plenty of people that, April, I'm sure you know and our listeners know, that are crazy charismatic. They walk into the room and the room lights up. And
Yeah.
even though sometimes that's not natural for some people, I think you can learn that. And I think you can learn to be that light in the room. So let's back up a few years. I knew when I was a young adult and I was trying to, going to college and paying for a lot of it myself and trying to figure out my way in the world and wondering why isn't anybody inviting me to the table? Because I was young and I didn't have experience,
Yeah.
but I so yearned for it. I'm like, how do I do that? So I
I
started,
love it.
right? I started watching people. And the best advice I can give people if they are scared to death of just getting out there and sharing their story and being confident, I think that's a lot of it. Start watching other people. And it's not to say that you have to be just like somebody else, but I think you can pull bits and pieces and little nuggets. You're like, I love how she stands. I love how, her hair is, or how she, how she walks around or holds herself or, shows up to something. It can even be as simple as like, this person's body style looks very similar to mine. How is this woman dressing in a confident, professional, sassy manner? What style do I want to emulate? And then get really comfortable with owning that.
Yeah.
I know Thinking when I talked a little bit on my podcast, we're of a similar age. I know that, as I've gone through my career, and I'm going to talk about fashion for a minute because I think fashion
Yeah.
and how you present yourself is your personal brand. And I think you need to own
I
your
agree.
personal brand down to your toes and feel confident walking out the door every day, how this looks. And how this looks for you might look totally different than somebody else. But I want you to figure out what your brand is. And that's don't necessarily follow the trends. So, for example, I know you can't see my full body. I'm a curvier person. I have curves. And so I know for my body style, what fashion style looks good on my figure is something more streamlined, like a pencil skirt, a sheath dress, that are kind of those classic styles. Now, I love seeing all the trends with the flowy dresses and stuff like that. In my opinion, that doesn't flatter my figure very well, so I tend to stay away from that. So I've kind of built this. I love the colors, and I love a little sass and a little flair, and I think you do too. I'm seeing your bright colored shirt and just how you're put together. So it's a constant tug and pull of, yes, I want to be current. I want to be relevant. I don't want to look like a fuddy-duddy. And I want somebody to see when I walk in the room, I want somebody to go, ooh, she's somebody I want to know. You can do that through fashion, but you can also do that from the look that's on your face. And the way eyes are up, head is up. I see too many people on their phones because they're looking, they have the hunchback look, right? If I can give any advice to women, look up. When you're walking down the street, you're looking up. Even if you have your sunglasses on, you're looking up, you're looking forward, you're looking at people, you're making eye contact on purpose. That's the thing that I think will elevate you and give you confidence. Because if you're the one to approach somebody first, you're the one, even if you're walking down the sidewalk and you make eye contact, hello, good morning. I bet they'll be like, oh, hello. You just initiated something. And I feel like that's a quick, easy challenge that you can immediately give yourself confidence to say, I'm going to challenge myself today. I'm going to say hello to 5 people, random strangers on the street, at the grocery store, at the coffee shop. I'm going to look them in the eye. And I'm going to say, hello, good morning. That's all you have to say. And you'll see their reaction to you. And over time, that will boost your confidence because all of a sudden they're like, oh, she's someone to take notice of, right? I also think, the clothes you wear, how they fit your body, do they make your body feel confident? Do you feel great in your skin? If you're somebody that hates wearing high heels, I love my shoes. But I know, sometimes if I'm on my feet all day, those shoes are the worst thing for me. But what makes me feel good? What makes me feel like if you think about your favorite outfit in your closet and you're like, ooh, I'm going to get out there and I feel so good in this. I want every outfit every day to make you feel like that. And so just little things you can do, but it's over time. It's a practice. It's a mindset. It's listening to things in your life, whether you're listening to podcasts or you're engaging with other positive people that get in your head constantly and give you permission. And I think that's a lot of it. So that's another topic. Thinking about we as women, I feel like we want permission from other people to act or do a certain thing or way. And I'm like, you don't need permission. You don't need permission.
I know.
But at the same time, if you want to get in front of a certain audience to grow your business, to make an interaction, you have to manage how you communicate with that population or with that person. Because how you communicate with a 70-year-old white guy is going to be totally different than how you communicate with a 25-year-old tech dude from Silicon Valley. I mean, it's going to be a very different dynamic. And so you have to meet them where they are and figure out adjust your style a little bit, be authentic, of course, but make sure that you are showing up to the audience that's in the room in front of you.
Yeah, I think that's a key point that has been lost in today's world. It's so funny. I remember I had a public speaking class when I was like in 7th or 8th grade because I was, in the Create program, which was the gifted program. And so we actually did Toastmasters and it was like 7th or 8th grade. And I remember I gave a speech about how to talk to an audience. And all I did was take like how you should write an essay. And I used the same, steps of like, know your audience, speak their language, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's so incredibly important. And I don't think that people take enough time to do that today. Like they're very challenged. And look, if you're talking to different audiences, you don't need to know them completely in depth, but you need to know what's going on in their industry, what their concerns are, what their goals are, like what their lifestyle is like, and be able to speak to that. And I love that you point that out. And I love that you said you can learn charisma, because you're right. There are some people that, and in my experience, the most charismatic people I know in my life were not the most successful because things came too easy to them. So they didn't have to develop the skill set sometimes to do. And I was guilty of that early in my life. I was very intelligent. Everyone liked me. Things came easily to me. Like, I went out all the time in law school, and yet I got a job at the best law firm in Atlanta. Like, and so these things come, and then the hard times come, and that's when you have to put the skill sets in and not just rely on these innate talents or find somewhere where they're going to work for you. But for me, charisma is really just being a good person, giving value to others, and being curious about other people. And I think you gave great tactical tips about how to do that. But if you, like you said, don't walk in the room on your phone. Like, that's insane to me. I actually rolled my eyes when you said that. So if anyone's watching this on YouTube, I'm sorry. But like, it's just a pet peeve of mine when people aren't present in the moment and paying attention to others, yep. Especially if you're going into a networking event. Like, the whole purpose is to be there and meet other people. And, it's always like setting yourself up for success. Okay, in this 50 minutes of my life, because I like to divide it up by 50 minutes, not an hour, so I have breather room. Like, what is my primary purpose? Okay, I'm walking into a networking event. So my primary purpose is to be friendly. And I like to walk into them with, okay, I need a new CPA, or I need a speaker to talk on my podcast about this. Like, I tend to go in with a mission. So, and I get such better results. Or I just want to meet that one or two people that I vibe with and I really like. And I think sometimes people are hitting everyone, and it's like, how are you going to go deep with that many people? So, that's just how right. I personally network. I love it. But I totally agree with you. When I used to give dinner seminars, and often we would do them across the street from our office, and I would tell my team, hey, reminder, you walk out this door, game face is on, because, imagine they're not being a good person. They cut someone off going into the restaurant, and they get out of the car, and that person's coming to our dinner seminar, and we're trying to convince them to have an appointment with us. So I really believe in being a polite, good person all the time, but we all get stressed and have to remind ourselves. Like, I like to call it game face, but it's really just being present and interested in other people. I think when you show up as a good person and then you're the speaker on the stage, people are like, oh my gosh, who is this person? Like, she held the door for me as I was walking in, and now she's up there on the stage talking. Like, that makes an impact. And what you're talking about is playing the game on a different level. And I don't know if many people know this, but Michael Jordan did that. So he knew all the referees in a game. Like, during his career, he would get to know all the referees, their kids, where their kids were in school, if their kids played basketball. And he would always say, hey, ref, your son's in the 5th grade, right? Like, what's going on? And so if anyone remembers, they called it the Michael Jordan effect, because they would not call penalties on him. Like, they would show someone doing the exact same thing, and this person got a penalty, and Michael Jordan did it, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, was he playing a game? He was really just being a good person, and it pays off because people like you.
Absolutely. You bring up something too, just about being a nice person. Yeah. I know I was talking to my team the other day, and we were talking about rejection, because sometimes you don't get the business. Sometimes you have a client that says, no, thank you. And they don't say it in that way. How do you handle that rejection? And my best advice, and this is what we were talking about, I'm like, always handle it with grace. You never know. Yes. You never know when that opportunity could come back around. And you never know. I'm in a heavy referral-based business. You never know who they're going to say your name to somebody else. Because the last thing I would ever want is that, yeah, it might hurt to lose some business, of course. But you're also waiting for the next opportunity. And so you always want to be presenting yourself as a gracious, with, realistic expectations. I'm pretty straightforward when I talk to my clients about my expectations of them and vice versa. Yep. So it's not a rollover and, take one for the team. But it's being professional and kind and courteous, because my hope is, and that's a cultural shift that you have to make for yourself, but also your company. You want everyone to treat everyone, with kindness, and kind of with the golden rule. It's like, we want you back. If it's not right for you now, it's going to be right for you hopefully down in the future.
Well, and also when you think about sales as a service, because you're really there seeing if you can serve them. And maybe the best way you can
Right.
serve them at this moment is by not serving them, right? So you still, that's why I love consultative sales, because you've still made this person's life better through this process, and they're going to remember that, because if you're giving them something of value,
Right.
they're going to I just got a message the other day from a realtor in Houston. I spoke to a group there for Houston Association of Realtors, and I was like, hey, what's been your biggest win since, because she followed me on Instagram, since I saw you in Houston? And she was like, oh my gosh, my life changed that day. And she goes on to tell me like all these things she took out of my speech. And like, I don't know that she'll ever be a client, but like, how good does that feel that you've impacted someone's life? So, and you know,
That's
it's so
right.
funny you mentioned I have all these women becoming clients now because I started a new community, and it's like framed a little differently, who I met a year ago, and they're like, you've been so great to me for a year, and they were just waiting for the right fit to work together. So
Uh-huh.
I think what you're sharing is so important, and especially when you have younger team members, like helping them to understand this sooner, because it is painful when you get the no. Like we put our all into things, and it
Absolutely.
can be
Yeah.
painful.
The other thing I thought about too is competition. I think competition for some of us can be very scary. And when I talk to a lot of small business owners, their hesitancy to get started or to grow in their industry, like, well, there's all this competition. There's competition everywhere. And actually, I think competition is
I
a very
know.
good thing. And if I can tell a personal story, so when I started my company 3 years ago, leaving the big corporate brokerage firm, I actually get more business now from my competitors on a referral basis because I'm open to it. It's miraculous because I've treated them with professionalism and kindness, and
Mm-hmm.
we have a reciprocal relationship. I honor the relationship they have with their client, and I make sure when they're passing me business that I'm honoring that as well to their client. And so, what I can give people advice to is that you never know where your business is going to come from. And I guarantee you,
Yes.
regardless of what industry you're in, let's say you sell shoes or makeup or coffee or a service, yes, there are probably going to be competitors in your market space, but I guarantee you your type of business is a little bit different than theirs, and you have to figure out what that is because sometimes you can work together.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a similar style business, maybe this company, offers this type of package to a client. Well, you can serve them in this way, and so
Mm-hmm.
looking at those partnerships with open eyes and, and a theory of collaboration and a world of collaboration, because that can move you all forward. And I'm a firm believer, and I say this a lot to people, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
And I've never seen the world as finite. I've had, some past team members that said, well, the pie is only so big. I don't know if I can swear on this show, but I call bullshit on that.
Yes, I agree.
There is so many opportunities out there. The pie is never
Mm-hmm.
finite because, opportunities exist in the least expected ways. And so if you're open to that mindset, the world is your oyster.
Well, yes, it's the difference in an abundance mentality and a scarcity mentality. And, I'm a huge fan of what you're talking about. I just call it collaboration over competition. Like, competition is the masculine version, collaboration is the female version, and the world's moving more into female energy, right? And I remember in 2019, it was before COVID, I went to a client, there was a speaker at some financial conference I was at, and he was talking about client service, and it was amazing. And he mainly, helped hair salons. Like he had a ton of hair salons, but he would have this client service revolution convention. I was like, I'm going to this because, we're always trying to increase our client service. I ran my financial company then. And I went into a separate session talking about selling to women. At that point, women were making up 83% of buying decisions in households, right? And that's in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's higher now. And so they were talking about how everybody was still doing old school selling, like the masculine way, but women were making the decision. And they also
Right.
talked about if you changed your process to appeal to the woman, even if she wasn't speaking during things, like, but
Mm-hmm.
still catered the process to the woman, the men actually found they liked it too. And you closed more men. And so like that gave me the permission to operate how I wanted. I totally changed our appointment process, and our business grew like crazy me, because it was, our first appointment, we're like, what are your hopes and dreams for retirement? Like, what are your personal core values? Okay, what do you have in place to support this? And literally, they would just hand me their tax returns and statements and everything in the last 5 minutes of our first appointment, because we were talking about all this other stuff, right? And I could always tell in that meeting if they were clients or not. And it was just shifting that mentality of having like a real conversation and talking in the feminine energy. And that's why I'm sure you hear this a lot, Kirsten, but so many women I work with are like, I hate sales. I'm like, really? You hate helping people? Because that's really all you're doing in sales. It's just an exchange of energy. So I don't know. I think we need to reframe our thinking about sales. So I'd love to ask, what's your advice? Like, what do you coach your team to when it comes to sales? Because we talked about rejection, but so many people cringe to even go into it, right?
Right. The way I coach my team, I say, I want you to, every time you step in front of a client, whether it's a brand new client or the first appointment or whatever, put yourself in the position like you're giving them a gift. You are offering them a resource. And, sometimes we're cold calling, we're trying to share data, that data is not a whole lot of fun. But, if you approach it in the way that I'm not trying to sell you anything, I am trying to provide you with information and a resource that might be interesting to you. And it might not be right now, but you might know somebody that would really value this information that I'm giving you. And I always encourage my team too. I'm like, even though our how we make our money is by transacting commercial real estate. I mean, that's what pays the bills. But realistically, how we nurture our client base is, it's not always through the real estate vehicle. It's like, I heard you talking the other day at this coffee function. It sounds like you're looking to add somebody to your team. Tell me more about that. I might know somebody. Be a connector. I love that. You might hear somebody that, gosh, they're really struggling with, I had a client the other day said, I need somebody to help with my payroll. Do you know anybody? I absolutely do. I have a big network. Let me give you several names that you could connect with. And you're the one to make those connections, because people remember that. So you're creating value constantly in their mind and in their business. And then, the thing is that's a little bit hard to quantify. When people come into my world and, they call me about real estate, I always say, great, how did you hear about me? It's not always from they saw my name on a real estate sign. In fact, very, very few times it's because I saw my name on a real estate sign. More than likely, it's because they heard about me through somebody else. You helped my friend Sally with this. You showed so-and-so how to get set up in this area. And that's exactly what I want to hear. Because what I also tell my clients and my team, I'm like, if our clients are not successful, then we're not successful. I mean, I can help them buy a building or sell a building or get into a space or do all these things. That is one part of the business journey. And the last thing I want to do is help them go rent a space in downtown to open a coffee shop, and they shut down in 6 months. That doesn't do anybody any favors, because then they're dealing with, financial responsibilities. The landlord's upset. We have an empty space. What is going on? Right. So a lot of times when I meet with clients for the first time and I say, I want to give you a gift. I don't say it that way, but I say, talk to me. Tell me your story. Tell me your why. Because a lot of times people come to me when they're business owners. They're like, okay, I use this on my podcast a lot, so bear with me. I make donuts at home. I make amazing donuts, and I make them in my home kitchen, and I cater them for events, and my friends eat them, and I have 20 different varieties, and they're beautiful. I'm like, that's so exciting. And they call me because they're like, I'm going to open a donut shop, and I saw that space downtown, and it's so cute, and it has high ceilings and character. I'm like, wonderful. I can't wait to meet with you and talk with you more about this. But first, help me understand your business plan, and I ask some hard, candid questions. We get into the finances, we get into the hiring, we get into the inventory control, we get into the supply chain management. And that's where the consulting side comes in. I do not have all the answers specifically to help them with each and every decision-making process. But what I want them to do is put the plan together, and then I have people in my world that can help them do that. Some of those resources are absolutely free, and some of them they might have to pay for, but that initial meeting is always kind of a free, let me get the experts in your corner to really get you set up on solid footing. Then when you're ready, then let's go after the real estate, because the real estate might not be right now for you. It might be 6 months or a couple years down the road when you are ready, because I don't want to ever put somebody into bankruptcy because they didn't make good choices or weren't prepared for stuff. So it's funny as we talk about that element, starting a business and the fear of failing. When COVID hit, we saw a lot of businesses fail. And as much as I hate to say it, the businesses, and I'm speaking to kind of my neck of the woods in the Midwest and in our communities, a lot of them are restaurants or hospitality because they need people physically in their doors to make a living. But what I saw, the businesses that had to shut down in the first 30 to 60 days were quite honestly going to fail in that first year anyways. Because honestly, if you are putting together a business plan and you are not ready to survive even a 60-day shutdown, and that 60 days could be because you had a baby, you have a parent that needs help with something, you had a fire, I don't know, there's all kinds of reasons why your business might have to push the pause button. But if financially you can't survive that, you're not going to survive long term anyways. And so as much as my heart hurt for those businesses that failed during that time, I'm like, I wonder what their plan really looked like, to let them survive. Because we just want to survive and we want to thrive. So don't be afraid of asking good questions, going in thinking, I want to pull information out of you because I am giving you a gift and I am here to help you be solid and be successful.
No, I love that because you're expanding so much further beyond the transaction that you do, right? So even though it's still service-based, finding the right space, etc., for someone, you're adding so much more service to it. And I think that, well, one, people want to be seen and heard. They want to know that they matter. So obviously you're doing that with your clients. And not only does it make your business better, it makes the world a better place. So like that's a win-win scenario. But they want to be seen and heard, and then you've now created an entire experience for them instead of a transaction, right? And that's what people want in today's world. And just like you said, yeah, I used to have this saying in my firm. I had one client, it was actually the largest client at that point I would have been bringing on, and he was like, we love you. And he was kind of like, I liked him because he was tough, but he was like tough in a fun way, right? And then he was like, well, I mean, you're more expensive than your competitors. And I was just like, what competitors? And he goes, yeah, you're right. And like they signed, like that was it. But like, I truly believe that, right? Like I wouldn't have said that if I was just trying to get them. And we weren't more expensive, by the way. You know how it is. Everyone hides their fees and stuff. So I could have gone the logical route and explained all this to him. But I was just like, I just feel when you serve above and beyond, there is no competition. Like someone might walk into your office and they just want a transaction. So they don't want to jump through all these hoops that in their mind they're seeing where you're really trying to help them. Great. They're just not a match for you. And like you said, let them go work with someone else. And then they may realize, wow, Kirsten really knew what she was talking about. Let me go back there. Right. So I think when you operate your business at a level that you believe in and you believe you're serving at the highest level, like there's no way to lose. So I want to hear about how you help, first of all, your team adopt your service mentality. And then I want to make sure we segue into, I know you're really passionate about consulting and you've even started some online courses to help other people. So let's chat about, I'll let you take the ball wherever you want with that conversation.
I think team building is a constant evolving process, quite honestly. And I think building a culture is a constant evolving process. And some people I think are natural born teachers and can break down tactics and skills and methods in a training opportunity. I'm a firm believer I can teach anyone a skill. I can teach anyone, okay, let's talk about specifically how to transact commercial real estate, for example, what are the elements of a contract, how to understand a lease. Yeah, absolutely. And that's something, we can learn in an online environment or in person or whatever. The thing is, that's a constant evolving process for me and my team is like, how do I want them to approach the clients in the world? And a lot of it is through shadowing. It's through inviting them in and seeing how I talk. And we recently had a gentleman come to our office to pitch him on a service that he wanted us as a client. So he wanted our firm to engage in his services. And we ended up not engaging with the services, but it was a great experience to bring somebody else into our office. And my team was there and they got to experience a very different style of sales. And and he met with us for like an hour. He was wonderful, very professional, very polished, but very different than my style and very different than my team's style. And when he left, I said, what did you think about him? And so we kind of dissected that. And that was a great learning opportunity to see that. So I encourage you, if you are a sales environment, and honestly, every business is in sales, everyone, it just looks a little different.
100%.
Invite other salespeople into your world. I mean, don't do it to be, to suck up their time, especially if you're not going to buy from them. But realistically, if it's something that you think I might engage with this, have them come in and pitch you. See how that works. And I even asked my team, I said, okay, how did you think he was dressed? What did you think about how he was dressed? And this guy showed up. He was very dapper. Suit, which is almost unheard of nowadays. Tie, little pocket handkerchief. I mean, hair was perfect. Shoes looked great. Very charismatic. And I said, and when we got done kind of dissecting that, I said, would you buy from him? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, why? Why would you buy from him? And I said, do you remember specifics of what he was selling? He said, no, but he made a point as he went around the room, he looked everyone in the eye equally. I mean, he really, he sat in a way that made us feel like he wasn't just fixing on one person. He asked a lot of questions. He asked us to share about our organization back to him. And he made a point to say, I want to make sure if we move forward together in business that we're a fit mutually for each other. And I'm like, that's a wonderful piece of advice. And kind of the same thing. It's like, we have to have a mutual fit, because if I win and you lose, or if you win and I lose, that's not a fit for anybody. It has to be a win-win. Nope. And, so the one thing I know that we do in real estate a lot is we negotiate. That's part of our skill set. And negotiation is a very interesting area of communication. And everyone has a different style of communication and how they negotiate. And I know in real estate, we're talking about numbers and finances. And it's our goal when we represent our clients, we want to get them the best deal, whether it's the highest price if they're a seller or the lowest price if they're a buyer. But outside of finances, there's so many different elements to a negotiation outside of price. In fact, price is probably a really small part of the transaction. And what I encourage my team to focus on is like, okay, what are the other elements? And those, a lot of times for all of us across the board in and outside of real estate, time, effort, and responsibility. What does that mean for your client? Are those three things something that you can help take off their plate so they don't feel the burden of time, effort, and responsibility, but you are creating a success platform and a pathway that makes them feel like, oh, so all I have to do is sit back and wait for and you basically deliver it to me. And that's how we should all be thinking about business. It's not just price. And April, I know you mentioned earlier about when you're talking to your client, you might be higher priced. And a lot of times when I first meet with clients and I pitch them, I'm like, here's what I am, here's how we work. I want to ask a lot of questions about them. And then we get to the point where we're actually talking about that business relationship and that contractual relationship. What I found is when I have a new client right off the bat question my fees, a red flag goes up for me, because I think, okay,
Same.
I did not either communicate effectively what my services were, or that's what's important to them. And that's the only thing that's important to them. So I've actually walked away from a lot of clients when we approach that. And I have a response on how I said, I appreciate you asking about a reduced fee or how this works. Let me tell you how I work. If it's not a fit for you, that's okay. And I would say, in my 11 years of doing commercial real estate, I've only had maybe a handful of clients that we didn't end up working together because of that one factor. But it's funny, a lot of them came back to me later on and wanted to use me, And so I would say it also goes back to confidence and believing in what you do. Now, you have to have experience to back that up. And so sometimes when you're new to an industry, you might think about how you can provide a discount to get started. And maybe that's a trade-off. It's a one-off. I've also had some clients, if I'm doing multiple lines of business with them, we're doing multiple deals and the volume is significant, we might talk about restructuring a fee structure, because it's more about a volume and what am I providing? Or am I providing some complementary consulting services over on the side that, that will fall into a transaction? So you have to think about that globally. But what I don't want you to do, if you're a business owner, don't discount your fees right off the bat because you're so desperate for the business. There has to be another way. And I think getting very comfortable communicating your value and what that looks like and answering those pain points for that client is so paramount, because if you can identify what's most important to them, and a lot of times that has nothing to do with cost or finances, it's solving a problem. And you have to get really good at identifying what that problem is.
No, I love that. And actually, I didn't know we were going here today, but people have been asking us to talk about pricing. And then one thing I recommend to anyone new, because you mentioned being new in an industry, everybody talks about like average rates, like hourly rate or packages, or here's like, and I'm like, okay, you can't just go by that. I want you to go pick like 3 to 5 companies or businesses that do what you do. I want you to do the competitive analysis of what they're charging, but then I want you to see what they're offering for that price and compare it to what you're offering, because a lot of times you're offering more than that. So why are you charging the standard fee, right? But that also gives them the facts to do what you mentioned, like being able to articulate their value and what they're bringing to the table. But I agree. Price usually is not an issue for most people. And for sure, I mean, as my financial career went on, and again, as I mentioned, that one client just liked to be fun and challenge. So I was kind of having fun back with him. But had we pushed, I would bend over, because you realize the ones that do want to dissect your fees are going to be what you call the PETA clients down the road, like pain in the, I'll leave it up. And like you said, so to talk about what you said, when I was first a financial advisor, I mean, I literally had just gotten divorced, didn't have anything to my name, had just moved to a new city. Like whatever I made, I like had to live on and grow the business. And so you do tend, and I also didn't understand the business well enough. So yeah, everyone that says yes, you take on as a client. And then later, as you mature as a business, you've realized that you've created your own client service nightmare. So I think so many new businesses don't think about the back end of, they're just focused on, let me get business, let me get business, let me get business. And when you're not focused on how that client's going to be, the longevity, the lifetime value of the client, do you want to work with this person? That's when you create this business that you're in a cage instead of enjoying what you're doing. So I love that you brought that up. I think it's not spoken about enough. So I know we're almost out of time. Thank you so much for your pearls of wisdom today. I'd love to invite you, share with us a little bit about your online class, and then I want to ask you some fun questions to wrap up.
Okay. So I have a new online course, and we were laughing about this earlier. So here's Kirsten's, trials and tribulations about launching an online course, because I know probably many of you listening have an online presence or thinking about this. So part of what I do is in commercial real estate, obviously, but a lot of what I do is coaching other businesses, to make sure they're on solid footing and have the resources going forward. What I've realized over time, I work in a smaller market. So my primary market is about 100,000 people. I'm about 30 minutes west of Kansas City. I work all over the state, but really that's my home base. And what I've realized, I work with a lot of different companies, some of them national brands, some of them are local, but a lot of them are looking at multi-market strategies. How do I expand into different areas? So I was working with a national franchise restaurant chain that said, hey, we're working on, some real estate strategies. They were interested in another community in the state where I live in Kansas, but it was a few hours away. He said, we love working with you. Can you help us with this? And I said, you know what, let me get back to you on that. And I thought about it. I'm like, the time it would take for me to travel and drive there, it's not a market I'm very familiar with. This community is only about 10,000 people. I said, you know what? I feel like I would do myself and my client a better service if I connected them with another real estate expert in that market. So I did a little research. There was no commercial realtors in that market, period. I'm like, oh shoot, What am I going to do? Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, this is a challenge because commercial real estate makes up a lot less of the market than residential real estate. And in any given market, there's a lot more residential realtors out there than commercial realtors out there. So I did a little homework. I thought, okay, who is a residential realtor in this market that I could connect with? And so I interviewed some people, got them on the phone, said, tell me about yourself. Ended up choosing this wonderful woman. And I said, here's what I have. I said, I'm not even asking you to pay me a referral fee. I want to make sure that my client is taken care of in a professional and wonderful manner. I will walk you through the process and I will help you with that. So that's what we did. And so that was kind of the premise for the course. So I have a new online course called the Commercial Real Estate Toolbox. So if you are somebody that's a licensed real estate agent, you work in a smaller market, you see there's an opportunity to expand your horizons into commercial real estate. Doesn't mean you have to jump in with both feet and do it full time, but I feel like there's not a lot of great training for that. So that's what this course is all about. You learn about leasing and sales and how to navigate that market and be an expert and a resource for the businesses in your area. Because if you're somebody that already serves a market and maybe it's a smaller market, what a wonderful way to elevate your business than by serving businesses that also could have been your residential clients as well. So my funny story is that when I launched my course recently, sent out my first email, I forgot to include the link on how to enroll. So it happens to all of us, but I mean, I have failures too. And so don't be afraid to get out there and just give it a try.
I love it. So if you're listening and you're interested, we have the link in the resources section of the show notes. So you can find that at vixengathering.com. Go to the podcast episode and you can find it there. And if you haven't, subscribe to the Vixen Voice while you're there. And this beautiful resource would pop up in your inbox. You wouldn't even have to search for it. So thank you, Kirsten. I love you sharing the resource and sharing the stories, because we've all had those moments where we're like, what did we just do? I love it. Awesome. So to wrap us up today, I'm going to flip us a little bit. We talked about feminine energy today, and I really, at the Vixen Gathering, I like to help women design a business around their dream life. And a lot of that is honoring your masculine and your feminine, knowing when to use which so that you don't burn out. So I'd love to ask you, what are you doing or what's going on when you feel your most feminine? Like you're just in the flow and things are great.
Okay, this is probably kind of sounds silly, but I'm a little OCD when it comes to my space. I feel my most at peace and probably my most feminine when my house is clean.
I like it.
And I have a house cleaner that comes every couple of weeks, but there's something, especially in the evenings or going into a weekend, I would say if I have, the floors are vacuumed, everything's put away, things are smelling fresh, I probably feel more inspired in that creative way as a female, and I feel relaxed. I know neither my husband and I like to cook, but we have to eat, and I don't like to go out to eat every night. And so I feel like that's an area that allows me to slow down a little bit and be present, in not only, my giving and communication style with my spouse, but also feeling those creative juices flow. I feel like, sometimes we get bogged down by all the to-do lists. I think you have to find a way to either park the to-do list for the next day and be ready for the next day and put it in a place that's out of sight, out of mind, but maybe a little organized, whether you shut the door to your office, you put it in a drawer. Because I think sometimes if we can get rid of the clutter in our visual line of sight, that allows us to feel more connected to who we are as females.
I love it. No, great advice. And then what color would your feminine energy be?
Ooh, I would say hot pink. In fact, I have a purse that I special ordered that has hot pink in the inside. I love bright colors. I mean, you can kind of see what I'm wearing a little bit too, but I say, I also love the color blue. I love the color green. My company's the color green, but feminine, I like something bolder because I'm by no means a wallflower, but I also, having a little pink in there, I think is a little tied to a more feminine side of who I am.
I love it. And I actually saw there's an artist I follow on Instagram, and she had a post about why am I happy when I see pink? And it's a dopamine stimulant. So there actually is science behind the color pink. So that was really interesting. Yeah. So there you go. Fun fact. Awesome. Well, Kirsten, it's been so great today. You dropped so many pearls of wisdom. Thank you. And I always like to share with our audience, I just really think the world needs more love right now, and I like to challenge them. How can they show up more loving to those around them and loving to themselves? So what's your final message that you'd like to share with our audience?
Don't be afraid to have one-on-one conversations with people. I think in this world, we are such a reactive, defensive society, especially with social media. I'm going to challenge you, and I think you probably heard this 1,000 times, so I hope you have. Take a break from social media. Give yourself a time limit, 10 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. You get lost in the shuffle and you get lost in the imposter syndrome. I encourage you, if you want to gain understanding on a topic or with a person or with values, whatever it is. Invite that person to have a cup of coffee or a quick, phone conversation. Ask to understand, not ask to defend, not ask to say you're right. Ask to understand. And I think what we realize is the human race, we are so much more alike than we are different. And I think if we come at that place from a place of comfort and joy and acceptance, I think we can solve all the problems of the world.
I agree. I always say if everybody suddenly discovered unconditional love, compassion, and forgiveness, like we wouldn't even have to have government. I mean, we really could self-operate. So I love that. That's such a beautiful sentiment. And it's such a simple idea. Even if you said, hey, once a week on my calendar, I'm going to go have coffee with someone, or I'm going to go have a glass of wine. And you made that like a routine part of your life. I agree. Life would suddenly become magical. So thank you so much for that advice. I love it. Awesome. Well, Kirsten, thanks for joining us. Everyone out there listening, I will talk to you soon. Have a phenomenal week. And don't keep us a secret. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. Let them know about Kirsten's podcast and share the resources you find there as well. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to today's show notes, including links to all the resources we mentioned, visit vixengathering.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of The Vixen Voice.